Notre Dame is a new men's basketball coach, and it's the guy they wanted from the very beginning. Micah Shrewsberry is leaving Penn State to return home to Indiana and coach the Fighting Irish. And in today's episode, I'm going to be joined by Mark Titus, and you'll hear why we both think this is a massive win for the program and has the potential to bring Notre Dame basketball to a place it hasn't been in a really long time. All that and more on this edition of Locked On Irish.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, and welcome to Locked On Irish. It is Thursday, March 23rd, and thank you for joining me here. As always, the show is free and available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. So whether you're watching or listening, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button. My name is Tyler Wojciak, and I am the host. I'm a Notre Dame alum and have been a huge Irish fan for my entire life. Plus, I'm a producer at Fox Sports in Los Angeles. I apologize for posting this episode a little bit later in the day than normal, but the reason for that delay is I got the chance to talk with Mark Titus from Barstool Sports this morning about the hire of Micah Shrewsberry as Notre Dame's next men's basketball coach. Mark's one of the most talented people in the industry, in my opinion. He's definitely one of the very best when it comes to talking college hoops. I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but we used to work together on his old show, Titus and Tate, back when they were still at Fox. And he's been saying that Shrewsberry was going to be the guy at ND since the day the job opened up. So I really couldn't imagine a better guest to come on the show and talk about it. I think you guys are going to really enjoy what Mark has to say about Shrewsberry and what he'll be able to accomplish at Notre Dame, too. To be honest, I fully anticipated that I would spend this episode talking about Notre Dame's first spring practice, but then this news came out and completely upstaged all of that, so here we are. Since I'm posting this a little bit later in the day on Thursday, this is going to be my last episode of the week, but be sure to tune in on Monday to hear some of my biggest takeaways from the early part of spring practice for the Fighting Irish football team. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Irish and on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod to stay up to date on everything we're doing over here on the podcast, plus the latest news surrounding Notre Dame football and basketball. All right, let's talk to Mark. All right, Mark Titus is here, and I feel like I've got to start by saying you called it. It's documented, it's out there, and for those of you who don't know, Mark said on his old show, Titus and Tate, that Micah Shrewsberry was going to be the guy to replace Mike Brey like 2 days after Brey announced that he would be stepping down, and that was almost like 2 months ago to the day. So what are you hiding? Like, how did you know?
Well, what I'm hiding is that I get a lot of these wrong, I'm the king of, like, the second a job opens up, I just think of who in my mind would be perfect for it, and then I say that's the obvious choice. It's a done deal. They'd have to be crazy to go anywhere else. And then 99% of the time I'm wrong, but every so often I hit on one, like Micah Shrewsberry to Notre Dame. And when that happens, I go on podcasts and talk about how smart I am. So here I am.
If you throw enough at the wall, some of it will stick. So
Right.
That night that we did that, I watched Penn State play Rutgers. Probably the first time I watched Penn State basketball in like a decade. Do you remember what happened in that game?
Yeah, they got smoked, right?
They got absolutely crushed.
Yeah, they got smoked. Yeah, I gave you homework. I was like, Tyler, I know you probably don't know much about Micah Shrewsberry, but you're gonna love this guy. Go watch Penn State and report back to me. And then, like that night, they played Rutgers. Couldn't hit a shot.
They lost by 20, and they shot 4 of 26.
Yeah. But since then,
Since then,
pretty
they've
good,
turned
right?
it around. Yeah.
Right.
That was so funny. I was watching. I was like, oh, God. Like, I thought this season was bad. Maybe it's going to get worse. Maybe this is the lowest the program will ever be. So there's a bunch of different things I want to get to overall. What are your thoughts on the hire?
I mean, I've learned in this business since Archie Miller didn't work out at Indiana and Mick Cronin has worked out at UCLA. I've learned that it's impossible to guess how coaching hires are going to go, because I thought Cronin to UCLA made 0 sense, and I thought Archie Miller at Indiana would be a home run. So I'm scared to say that this is a slam dunk, if you will, Tyler. But like 2 months ago, I'll put it this way: it was obvious to me for a reason, and the reason it was obvious is Micah Shrewsberry. Number one, he's an Indiana guy, and I don't know how much that matters at a place like Notre Dame. It matters more probably at like Purdue and IU than maybe Notre Dame, but I think it should matter. That the guy has roots there and believes in not only the school but like the area of the country. And this is not a guy that I if things start going well for Shrewsberry at Notre Dame, I don't think he's going to leave unless like a Kansas or a Kentucky or someone like that calls. So like I think that makes a lot of sense. You have like a local guy, even though he's from Indianapolis. His style of play, I think, is perfect for Notre Dame fans. There's not going to be a lot of whiplash if you're in love with Mike Brey basketball. I know a lot of fans haven't been in love with it the last few years, but when Mike Brey basketball was at its best, I think Micah Shrewsberry is going to look very similar, where very offensive minded, very modern with his offensive philosophies, great X's and O's coach. All that kind of stuff just makes so much sense. And then what I told you is like the little wrinkle of like the high school he went to in Indianapolis, Cathedral High School. I know a lot of Notre Dame people know plenty about Cathedral, but for those who don't, like Cathedral was called, they're literally called the Fighting Irish. And what I remember about Cathedral playing them in high school, their football helmets were gold helmets. They are Notre Dame. They're Notre Dame at high school. They were Notre Dame jerseys. They even had like the leprechaun, like the punching leprechaun logo. They would wear. I'm pretty sure Notre Dame sued them because they were like, my God,
That's
can
classic.
you
Yeah.
not just like steal our identity? And that was the high school he went to. He spent time in South Bend. He coached with under Brad Stevens and Matt Painter. It just like the second the Notre Dame job came open, Shrewsberry was the first name that came to mind for me, which is why I said it 2 months ago. And for them to hire him, I think it makes a ton of sense for both parties, and I think this is a long-term play for him. I don't think he's going into this thinking, if I kill in the next 3 years, maybe I can take over at a bigger job. I think this is where he wants to be in the state of Indiana.
Yeah, the reports out there are saying that he signed a 7-year contract, which is a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
he was only at Penn State for 3 years, but it's funny that you bring up the Indiana part because I think that does matter a little bit more, or actually a lot more for the basketball coach, because the high school basketball in Indiana is a lot better than the high school football. So it matters a little bit more in recruiting. But it's funny because you're an Indiana native. Like, has any person in the history of America been so eager to get back to the Hoosier State? Because Shrewsberry turned down a ton of money from Penn State, and he was like, nah, I need to get back to Indiana.
Listen, man, there's something about it. This is why I was going crazy when the IU job was open a few years ago and Brad Stevens was getting floated and all the national people were saying there's a 0% chance he would take it. And I never said that like Brad was definitely going to take it. I didn't think that was, I didn't really know how plausible it actually was, but I thought there was more to it than the national people realized because whether basketball in Indiana is different or not, if you were born and raised in Indiana, you are led to believe that, and that matters to us. To Indiana natives, that is something that those of us that like grow up in basketball in that state carry with us no matter where we go. And there is a pull back home. There always will be. And it's hard to explain, but like I don't even have kids, and I'm not even married, Tyler, and I think all the time about how I want my son to play high school basketball in Indiana. And like I have to like position myself.
You're like scouting high schools, talking to coaches.
Yeah. And I don't even have kids. I'm not like this isn't something I have to the soonest I would ever have to worry about this is like 15 years from now.
Yeah.
And I'm already worried about it. I'm like, where will my kid play high school basketball in Indiana? Because it's important to me that he, is brought up in this culture that I was brought up in. So it is one of those things that like, it does seem very stupid on a national level, but I do think there's something to that. And I think there's something to that because that's something that I deal with. That like if I was in the coaching ranks, I would 100% rather coach at like Indiana State than like an Iona or something, like if I was like the coach at Iona and the Ball State job open. I mean, Ball State's a great example. Ball State's head coach is Michael Lewis. He was Mick Cronin's top assistant at UCLA. This man was living in Malibu, I think. I saw him out to eat in Malibu. I'm pretty sure he was living somewhere very nice. This man uprooted his family and his life to move to Muncie, Indiana, Tyler. I don't know if you've ever been to Muncie, Indiana.
I have not.
You don't need to. Just picture. You don't just trust. Take
seen
my word for it.
When I would drive from Louisville to South Bend to go back to school, I would literally drive from the most southern tip in Jeffersonville, Indiana, all the way up to South Bend. So I saw a lot of what Indiana had to offer, and in a lot of places, it wasn't a whole lot.
It was, that's Muncie. And Michael Lewis from Jasper, Indiana, played at IU for Bob Knight, all-time leads the program in assists all-time at Indiana. But I'm using him as an example because he was Cronin's top assistant at UCLA. There's a million timelines where some small school on the West Coast opens up, and he maybe doesn't even have to move his family, like maybe Lorenzo Romar moves on from Pepperdine and Michael Lewis is like, I'll take the Pepperdine job. And now I have a sick life living in Southern California. I'm a head coach. But the Ball State job opened up, and he was like, "I got to get back to Indiana. That's where I belong. That's where basketball means the most, and all that sort of thing." So I think there is something to that, and I don't want to give Notre Dame fans false hope and say that Shrewsberry is a lifer necessarily, because you never know what can happen, and we learned that with Ed Cooley. He was coaching at his hometown school, and he took the bag to go to Georgetown. So. This does feel like a long-term play, and the 7-year thing certainly reflects that.
We'll be right back with Mark Titus in a moment, but first, I want to tell you about FanDuel. The tournament is heating up, and now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. But that's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to points scored and threes made. For tonight, give me the Thunder to cover against the Clippers. The Thunder are 2.5-point dogs at the time of this recording, but Paul George just got hurt. He might be out for a while, and I just really love this young Thunder team. FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss a chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So you mentioned Brad Stevens, and Shrewsberry was part of his staff at Butler, and then again with the Celtics. So by hiring Shrewsberry, is Notre Dame effectively hiring Brad Stevens?
I think so. I think you have to. I think the Brad Stevens coaching. I'm part of the Brad Stevens coaching tree as well, by the way. So if any school out there wants to,
How so?
He coached the first team that Brad Stevens ever coached in his life. He was like 23 years old, and he was like a volunteer assistant for a team full of second graders in Indianapolis. And I was one of those second graders, Tyler.
And that wasn't enough sway to get him back to Indiana? Like, you didn't bring that up when the job was open?
You would have thought. I don't know what you would have thought that would carry more weight, but it didn't. And then I actually job shadowed Brad when I was in 8th grade too. He was a video coordinator at Butler, and we had to do a job shadow exercise in 8th grade where you had to like pick someone and to just follow him around for a week. And Brad Stevens, I just like went to Butler practices and grinded tape with Brad Stevens so I think that counts. I'm in the Brad Stevens coaching tree. No, yeah, he's that's the thing about Shrewsberry too. Is like, not only is I think he's an awesome coach, and I think like the fact that he got Penn State to a relevant point. I mean, Penn State is. I mean, I don't need to tell people, but it is a horrendous basketball program. It is a program where people just simply do not care. And for him to get some juice in that program this year, the last couple of years, speaks to his acumen, but also like he's just an awesome dude, man. Like you will not hear people say a bad word about the guy. And I'm still naive enough to believe that stuff matters when it comes to college coaches. There are a lot of places in this country where it doesn't seem to matter quite as much anymore. But that's something that still matters to me. So having an awesome dude and an awesome basketball mind, and you're going to fall in love with it, man. Like, wait till the first, like, big underneath out of bounds timeout, where there's like 1 second on the shot clock and late in the game, and he calls timeout and draws something up and you get a wide open shot. You're like, oh my God, this man's a genius. That's the Micah Shrewsberry experience.
That's good to hear, because after Bray stepped out, or really after his last home game, when those videos came out of him like doing shots with students, I remember thinking like, this next coach doesn't stand a chance, because Bray.
Yeah, I don't know if Shrewsbury's going to be doing that.
And I was just thinking like how much people love and respected Bray, despite how bad Notre Dame has been in the recent years. I just was like, wow, I don't know if any coach is going to get to that level, but hopefully Shrewsberry will. But it's interesting because ever since his name started popping up as one of the top candidates for the job, a lot of Notre Dame fans started paying more attention to Penn State basketball. And it came at a really good time, because Penn State made a run to the Big Ten tournament championship game. They beat the hell out of 7-seed Texas A&M in the first round, and then they looked really good against Texas in the second round. So we have a little bit of an idea of what to expect with Shrewsberry, but like, how did he do it? How did he turn Penn State around? Like, you're a Big Ten guy, you've been following it. How was he able to do that in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, so number one, he got Jalen Pickett, who I think came from Siena, I believe he transferred from. And Jalen Pickett if it wasn't Tyler Kolek this year, Jalen Pickett was the best point guard in the country, and he might be better than Tyler Kolek. It's just his team wasn't quite as good, so people weren't paying as much attention. But Jalen Pickett is was just like a do everything guy for them, and basically the answer boils down to like roster construction. Is that he found guys that fit exactly what he's trying to do, and what he's trying to do is frankly put up a ton of threes. Like that's how their offense is. He drove. I don't know if you saw this in the Big Ten tournament. After Penn State, they beat Illinois at least twice this year, maybe three times. I'd have to go back and look, but he drove Brad Underwood nuts. They beat Illinois in the Big Ten tournament. Brad Underwood, in the post game press conference, is complaining about what he called booty ball because Jalen Pickett basically just has the ball in his hand. Like he's just like he high usage rate guy that was just like backing dudes down. He just like does the Gary Payton. Colin Gillespie did it for Villanova forever. Jalen Brunson did it for Villanova too. He's just running point and he'll like back guys down, wait for a double team. If it doesn't come, he scores. If it does come, he kicks it out to a shooter and they hit a three. And like Illinois had no answer for it. And a lot of teams have no answer for it. And basically like Penn State this year, you caught them on the bad night against Rutgers. They weren't hitting, but they really could all season long. I believe they could beat any team in the country. And it seemed insane to say because there were times where Penn State did not look great. But Seth Lundy and Andrew Funk were like two of the best shooters in the country. Jalen Pickett is, like I said, one of the best point guards. So I think that's why he was so successful is that he does a great job of identifying guys who he can get the most out of in his system. And that's a testament to, the coaches that he's coached under. That's a Matt Painter, Brad Stevens. That's their MO, I know Matt Painter's not the hottest coach you name in the world right now, given his March performance. But the people that speak highly of Matt Painter, and if you pay attention to like how Matt Painter has gotten Purdue to be one of the better Big Ten programs, that's exactly what it is Matt Painter finds the guys that no one else wants. He gets the most out of them. Brad Stevens was doing that at Butler. And I think that's what makes Shrewsberry great is that he can see, he identifies what it is about certain players that'll make them great players. And then he unlocks that in them. And Jalen Pickett could have been, he could have played at a bunch of different schools and I don't think he reaches the heights he did at Penn State. And I think it's because Shrewsberry gave him free reign to showcase his abilities. And not only that, but put a great supporting cast around him. So I think that's what's going to be awesome. And that's why I think like him and Notre Dame is going to feel a lot like Mike Brey, because Mike Brey had that too, like some of the guys Mike Brey brings in, like a Bonzie Colson, like how highly sought after was Bonzie Colson when, he was, and like how many coaches when Bonzie Colson was coming out of high school were saying, I need that guy on my team. But Mike Brey knew exactly what to do with him. Matt Farrell, there's another guy that's like, I don't know how many other coaches could have got the most out of him like Mike Brey did. And I think Shrewsberry is great at that as well.
Yeah, you said Penn State likes to shoot threes, and that they do. They were first in the Big Ten in three-point attempts with 995 this season. That's 86 more than the second place team, which was Illinois. Yeah. But they actually hit them at a pretty efficient rate. I think they were 13th in the nation in that. And their styles are is pretty similar to Mike Brey, like you mentioned. And I feel like sometimes when there's been a coach who's been around for a really long time, the athletic director tries to hire a coach with the completely opposite style, like more defensive focus. Right. Do you actually put any stock into that, or is that just kind of more of a cliche?
I do think athletic directors try to do that. I do think there's value in that though, because I think what could happen and the name, image, likeness, and transfer and all that, I don't think this is as big of an issue anymore. But a lot of times coaches take over programs and there's the feeling out process. And if there's a world where Shrewsberry is not winning a ton out of the gate, and he's playing Tony Bennett style basketball, after Notre Dame fans for 20 years have watched Mike Brey basketball, Notre Dame fans will lose their minds, and there is a part to that where you want something familiar and you want something that can work, and you want the brand Notre Dame basketball to stand for something. So I do think there is value in that, because as the growing period or the transition period happens, if Notre Dame isn't, if you guys don't make the tournament next year, say, but along the way you're having a ton of fun, that matters, if along the way you're pulling upsets, and there's the one night where they hit 17 threes in a game against the top 10 team, and how cool is that? And Like all these little markers along the way, but then there's ups and downs, and at the end you don't make the tournament. That would be so much more. The fans would be so much more forgiving to Micah Shrewsberry in that instance than if you don't make the tournament and you're scoring 47 points a game, and you have the same results, but it's like not. It's
Yeah.
such a whiplash from what you're used to seeing. So I do think that matters.
I couldn't agree more because I just personally like watching offensive basketball a lot more. Like if Notre Dame sucked and they were playing games like that Tennessee-Auburn game earlier in the season where it was like 45-42 final or whatever it was, like that's way worse than if you lose, but at least you're exciting to watch. But he's walking into a pretty tough situation, I think, to say the least. We know how bad the team was this past season. Short-term future doesn't really look too great either right now. I think they only have 5 scholarship players on the roster. So how quickly do you think he can turn things around at Notre Dame?
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of the portal, I guess. That'll be interesting. I think that is where him being from Indiana will be important as well because I envision him leaning hard on that out of the gate. Like I could see him just like playing the Indiana card with kids in the portal and going after like guys that are native Hoosiers that are scattered across the country and appealing to them in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. I do know that he's going to find the guys that fit his system and that's exciting to think about. And being from Indiana, by the way, like that's the one thing Indiana should be known for is shooters. And the fact that Shrewsbury relies so heavily on 3-point shooting, and the more I think about it, the more I'm jealous that you guys have this man as your coach because he's awesome. I freaking love him. I'm going to be watching a lot more Notre Dame basketball than I have in the past couple of years for sure. That's for sure. So,
Do you think that this makes basketball, college basketball in the state of Indiana, just a lot more competitive now?
it makes it more fun. I mean, I thought about that not to keep harping on this like Hoosier native type stuff, but that I am a Hoosier native, so I care about this stuff. But you have a coach at Notre Dame, at Indiana, and at Purdue, and at Ball State, like I said, Michael Lewis earlier, who are all from the state of Indiana. You have a coach at Butler who's from Illinois, but he played at Butler, so he has like an affinity um for basketball in the state. I do think it makes it makes it matter in a way that you know me, Tyler. I've talked to you about this a million times. That like that's something I care deeply about. That people uh, think that Indiana has good basketball. So like I do think that this would be awesome to have so many guys at institutions that care so much about the culture of the place they're at. Like that stuff does matter, and it's something that I think is you're seeing a lot more of in college basketball. Just there's a lot more alums being hired at schools, and I know Shrewsbury didn't go to Notre Dame, but there's a lot more of those hires taking place where guys are getting hired to schools because they have an attachment to it or they're from that area or whatever else. And the days of like just hiring whoever the best name on the market is, that those seem to be that doesn't seem to be the default move anymore. And I think this stuff matters. So yeah, I'm excited. I do think the state. But I want to bring the Crossroads Classic back. But people
Totally.
didn't seem to like that much.
I think,
People don't seem
yeah.
to like that. But yeah, it was cool. I don't know if, or maybe like don't have them play each other. Just like have all 4 teams there, and it's like a quadruple header or something on the same day, and they're all just playing. I don't know what, but like there's got to be something now because I think the excitement around every program, and I know Purdue, kind of crap the bed and the NCAA tournament, obviously, but there is an excitement, and Butler wasn't great this year, but there is like some excitement around all 4 of the major programs in the state, and that's pretty cool.
So even though you're an Indiana native, you're actually an Ohio State alum for those of you listening who don't know. And you and I have talked about this before, how Notre Dame basketball and Ohio State basketball are actually pretty similar because everyone is just so inclined to hate them, mostly because of the football
Yeah.
programs. But the basketball teams have actually been very likable for the past decade
Right.
plus, really. So now Notre Dame does a move. They make a big splash. They pay a ton of money to get this hire. And it's different. It's not something that we're always accustomed to seeing with Notre Dame. So what do you think this hire does for like the perception of Notre Dame basketball around the country?
Well, Shrewsberry is one of the most likable guys. Again, I don't think fans really know a ton about him, and why would you? He's been a head coach for a couple years at Penn State, so he's not like exactly a guy that's getting a ton of run on ESPN and press conferences and all that sort of thing. Um, but I think you'll quickly find that he's extremely likable, and you base that off of like the coaches that he's worked with and coached against and all and what they have to say about him, and the people who uh, uh, know him well just speak so highly of him. So um, it is funny because I've talked to you about that. We both we both are alums of schools where our basketball programs should be fun, and they are. And
Yeah,
like
they are.
I hate Notre Dame football for what it's worth, which I grew up in the state of Indiana, and I'm not a Catholic, and that's pretty much that's if you check
That's
those two
it. Yeah.
boxes, you yeah, that's all you need. That's all you need to hate Notre Dame in Indiana. So, but as we've talked off air before, like I have had such an affinity for Notre Dame basketball because of Mike Bray and because of some of the players that came through the program, and it's such a likable program, and I think Shrewsbury is going to do all he can. Now he can't do anything about the Notre Dame on the front of the chest, unfortunately, and I think a lot of people that's a non-starter. They see Notre Dame and they see the colors and they say I can't cheer for that team, but I know what it's like, man. Ohio State, I've been saying the same thing. I think Ohio State basketball, if you just look at solely the basketball program, we play a fun style, we have likable guys, but at the end of the day, people watch Ohio State basketball and they say I don't want those morons that I met in the fall at a Big Ten tailgate. I don't want those people to be happy in the winter, so I'm going to cheer against Ohio State basketball because I hate those people I met
That's gonna be
in
you in
October.
September when you come to South Bend. You know that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I know. I'm coming to South Bend, by the way. I'll be there. I'll be there for the game, so I'm excited. I haven't been to a game
Yeah, I think I'm
before,
gonna be
believe it
there
or not.
too.
And
So maybe, well, I don't know if I'm gonna want to hang out with you then because you you might be, hang out with Ohio State fans before a football game doesn't sound like the most fun thing
well,
ever.
I will say. By the way, I like Notre Dame football in a way I never had before because Marcus Freeman's a Buckeye. So
Okay.
and not only is he a Buckeye, he's my era Buckeyes. I remember him well. Um, we lived, I think, maybe in the same dorm at the same time.
Oh wow.
I think so. But yeah, he's like a year older than me. So
Mhm.
he was at Ohio State playing. I remember his playing career very, very well. Him and James Laurinaitis playing together. Who's also on staff now, right?
No, he
Didn't
actually
didn't
just
Marcus
left
Freeman?
and he went back to Ohio State.
Oh, really?
Traitor, yeah.
Oh, he did?
Well, I guess he
Oh,
was a
all right.
traitor
Well,
originally by going to Notre Dame, and
yeah.
then he like did it back and went and left his best friend to go back
Well,
to Ohio State.
all right. Well, there you go. He saw the light. But no, I like Notre Dame football in a way that I had never had before, which is to say, I only really, really, really dislike you guys. I don't hate you anymore.
Oh, thank you. That was so kind of you. He comes into the ACC at like a weird time because Coach K is out, Roy Williams is out.
Yeah,
There's Tony Bennett. It's his conference, really. And
yeah.
we're at, like in college basketball as a whole, we're losing some of these great coaches, and they're like the icons in the sport because players come and go really quickly. Now we still got Rick Pitino going back to St. John's, and we saw how the hype train is going on over there. Do you think Shrewsbury, like his personality, I know he's really nice. Do you think he has the potential to be kind of like a big dog in the ACC down the line?
Yeah, I mean, also Jim Boeheim just
Yeah.
retired. Jim Larinaga is doing really well at Miami, but he's not getting any younger. Leonard Hamilton's another old head that's you know, maybe his best years coaching are behind him. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't mean to crap on it. He didn't have a great year this year, but yeah, I think the way the ACC is positioned in terms of the coaching hierarchy, it's Tony Bennett and everyone else. And even that, I mean, Tony Bennett obviously wins the league every year, but Virginia basketball isn't on the level that it has been when Tony Bennett like really built that machine in Charlottesville. So yeah, I do think it's there for the taking. I mean, Louisville is another program that obviously has a lot of
They
clout
haven't hit rock
in
bottom.
college basketball world, and yeah, they're obviously not great right now. So I do think that's interesting. I think Shrewsbury is can get Notre Dame on that level where he's competing for ACC titles year in and year out because the ACC is I I'm just fascinated, and I don't want to crap on the conference because the ACC has historically been the best basketball conference in the country. But you start to worry if like all this conference realignment stuff and the allocation of resources and TV rights and all that sort of thing, like the ACC as a basketball conference has not been great the last couple of years. And the question is this just like a temporary lapse? And like once, Hubert Davis and John Shire and Kenny Payne or whoever Louisville hires after Kenny Payne start to figure, and Syracuse, like once these other programs start figuring some things out, is the conference going to, reposition itself as the best in the country? Or is this like the canary in the coal mine that maybe it's the second Clemson and Florida State can bounce to the SEC, they're out, and then everything blows up? I don't know. But by the way, when Notre Dame eventually joins the Big Ten, and they will, we all know it's going to happen. There's been too much flirting going on for like 100 years at this
People
point.
have been saying that for decades.
They've been saying it my entire life. I've been saying it. But Shrewsberry, I do think we talked about this. I think with Tate, the two of us and Tate were talking that whoever Notre Dame hired, it felt like it was going to be a sign of whether they want to go to the SEC or go to the Big Ten. Like if they hire like a Chris Beard type, that's a big SEC move. And Shrewsberry is 100% a Big Ten move.
Yeah.
So I think to answer your question, I do think that the ACC is there for the taking, and there's definitely a power vacuum, and it'll be interesting to see how Shrewsberry navigates it.
All right, last question on the way out: who's going to win the national championship?
I picked Alabama.
Same.
And
felt dirty doing it.
I have not. It felt dirty. I'm not cheering for Alabama, but it's like Alabama. Feel like every game Alabama plays, they're going to have the most athleticism on the court. They're going to probably have the best defense on the court. They're definitely going to have the best player on the court. And on top of all of that, they can get red hot and blow you out in the snap of a finger. Alabama is not a perfect basketball team. They turn the ball over like crazy at times. They make a lot of stupid decisions. I've said all year, it looks like they don't even know how to play basketball, which isn't really a shot at Nate Oates' coaching abilities. I think it's just more like that he has a lot of young guys. And but at times it looks like they have no idea what the hell they're doing out there. They're just like relying on their athleticism and skill. But as it turns out, they have a lot of both. And
sometimes it's all you need.
That's all you need. So, I think it's Alabama, but if Alabama does trip up, and San Diego State's not a great matchup for them, they could slow it down and they can guard the 3-point line well. So I think that could be a better game than people realize. But they're just so good. Like they could be down 2 the entire game, and you think you got them, you're right there, and then you look up, and next thing you know, you're down 11. You're like, how the hell did that happen?
Yeah.
They have those bursts that no other team really has, and I don't know. I think at the end of the day, that's going to win out. But I think I might be cheering for UCLA, believe it or not.
Really?
I think that I think I might. I don't know. There's something.
I like
the injuries they've had, and UConn would be fun.
I like Hurley a lot.
Yeah. I don't. Who's America's team right now? Who's everybody cheering for? Because Florida Atlantic, everybody hates. Princeton is a 15 seed, but like.
Yeah, you're going to cheer for an Ivy League school? Right.
Yeah, what the hell? Like, none of these guys are underdogs. Get out of here.
It might be UCLA, honestly.
Well, UCLA just feels like they've dealt with injuries.
They've been around, too, and come up short a lot.
Come up short. And this class of Jaime Jaquez and Tiger Campbell and David Singleton are just, like, 3 really likable dudes. And, I don't know. And Cronin's actually become super likable, I think.
Which I did not expect.
He was – I did not – he was just like a grumpy old like little dude.
Yeah, screaming at refs at Cincinnati. Just unload – like red face. Like old Brian Kelly face, honestly.
Yeah, now he's like weirdly likable. And he's like – he's gregarious in press conferences and stuff. And I don't know. I think I'm rooting for UCLA, but we'll see. Texas would be a fun story too, I think. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of good teams, but unfortunately, I think Alabama's the best, and they're going to win it. And we're going to have to deal with. I just picture the girl at the Trump inauguration on her hands and knees, just yelling, "No!" It's gonna be a lot of America as Nate Oates and Brandon Miller raise a trophy above their head.
Yeah, one last point. It's gonna be so bad when Alabama makes it to the Final Four, and all the people who like don't really follow college basketball at all, and like Good Morning America, they're gonna be like, "Wait, are you seeing this? There's a team in the Final Four with a murderer," and then it's gonna really pick up nationally. That's gonna be the story of the Final Four. But hey, at least if Alabama, if they win, you can go on podcast and celebrate celebrate and be like, look, I called it. And if they lose, then we all win.
I called it.
Then we all win.
We all win. Exactly. You got to play both sides.
All right. So it's a win-win for you.
Succeed in this business.
All right. Be sure to check out Mark's new show for Barstool Sports, the aptly named Mark Titus Show. And Mark, I can't tell you how much I appreciate this, dude. Thank you so much, man.
Absolutely. We got to do it when Shrewsberry has his when he gets rolling, man. I want to come on the show and because you will not find a bigger Micah Shrewsberry fan outside of your fellow Gold Domer community than me.
We got to have you on in September before the football game, but we'll just argue.
Oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, we'll just argue about.
It'll be a lot less cordial.
I feel like both of us are just going to argue about how the other team's going to win. I feel like we're going to both be going into that game just like, you guys are going to kick our ass. And they're like, no, you're going to kick our ass.
Yeah, exactly. It's not going to be like a confidence thing. It's actually going to be the opposite.
Yeah, we're not talking shit. We're actually just like, dude, we suck. Yeah. You're going to kill us.
All right, man. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
That's a wrap for this episode of Locked On Irish. Thanks again to Mark, and thank you for joining us here. My guess is that some of you are new to the pod, and if you are, I hope you enjoyed this episode and continue to tune in down the road. On the way out, remember to subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Irish, on Instagram at Locked On Irish Pod, and my personal Twitter account at Tyler Wojciak. That's at Tyler, Wojciak. For your second listen, go check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball, where experts Isaac Shade and Andy Patton bring you everything you need to know on and off the court. Hear from big-name experts, coaches, and players throughout the basketball landscape. That's Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. I'll see you guys on Monday. Enjoy the weekend.